Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this Margins Meets event. My name is Susie Q. Smith, and I work with The Word. We're a nonprofit organization working to build a publishing community that will fight for inclusivity. Our mission is to promote voices from underserved communities and diverse backgrounds, to honor the stories of those who have faced adversity and injustice, and to provide a sanctuary space where these groups will see themselves in the future. My role with the Word is to direct the Margins Conference. Launched in 2020, Margins was created by and for people on the margins, promoting the inclusive representation of experiences in literature for all of the communities who have historically been excluded. Margins is a biannual conference, book fair, and literary festival. It's happening in Denver and online August 5th to the 7th, 2022. And I hope that you can join us. You can learn more about it at thewordfordiversity.org. We are so excited to welcome all of our guests today. We have three amazing poets who I personally adore and appreciate, and I'm so glad that they said yes. Today we will be hearing from Vogue M. Robinson, Ebony Stewart, and Darius Simpson. Each of our guests will offer a reading of their work, followed by a discussion about poetry as a tool for connection, community impact, and mental and emotional health. We'll be dropping links in the chat for their books, websites, and social media. And if you have questions, please also put them in the chat. We will save some space at the end of our hour together today for you all to ask your questions and for us to chat as a community. So today, we're going to hear first from Vogue M. Robinson. Vogue M. Robinson is a poet, author, mentor, and teaching artist. She has an appreciation for human beings who put truth and heart into words. She served as Poet Laureate of Clark County, Nevada from 2017 to 2019, and is the first Black woman to receive the Silver Pen Award from the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame. She also serves as a teaching artist within classrooms, community centers, nonprofits, retirement communities, and of course, inside your computer, live and direct. You can find her work at www.vogue316.com. And I'll also post a link to her Instagram. Without further ado, please help me welcome Vogue M. Robinson. Hey, how are you
Hi,
feeling tonight, Vogue?
how are you?
How are you in Las Vegas? How are things there?
They're good. The weather keeps, not deciding who and what it wants to be in May. So it was like 98 over the weekend, and then now it's swooshed down 10 degrees, and then the breeze is like 70. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you are here with us and that we get to be together on these here internet streets. Thank you
Absolutely.
for saying yes.
Yes. Thank you all for being here. So these are poems. These are poems. This is a found poem. So I collected things my mentors have said to me, and it just makes me emotional. So we're gonna do it though. Things my teacher said to me. Erica Vital Lazar, 2013. Claim all thrones. You are a force. They would be infinitely blessed to have you. I don't think you need that last line. From Bruce Isaacson, 2018. To hear her, she is herself good luck, a miracle that happened in her grandmother's home, a woman with no father that I love like a daughter. She is much smaller than the mountains to the west, but not much. How did it happen that I should peer from a distance into this person and see someone I love? What emptiness inside us can open? What God besides poetry affords me this honor? From Caitlin Featherstone, 2008. You'll make a wonderful teacher. Of that, I'm sure. You are first and foremost a storyteller, not one to rein in intellectual and creative ambition and pursuits. I nevertheless have some questions about how these broadly described areas, the personal and literary analysis, will result in a cohesive product. I think it would be best if you read my syllabus first before I give you an ad code. From Paul Menifee, 2009. I just did the Texas Dougie in my living room in your honor. I hope you appreciated it. From Sal Flores in 2006. Do you plan on pursuing a higher degree? No, you don't. Not with these grades. What do you have A's in? What do you already have 6 credits in? English? Switch your major to that because no one looks at where your bachelor's degree is from, but your GPA matters. From Mr. Gardner, 1998. You got to do the work. From Grandma, since the beginning of time. Vogue, you are a writer. That's the first poem. And speaking of my grandmother, this poem is for her. It is a duplex, which is a form that's all couplets from Jericho Brown. So he invented a form. So if you're afraid of poetry, you're not sure you fit in, I bet you do. And if you don't, please make space for that. And thank you so much, Ebony. So this is the duplex for my grandmother. My grandmother is dead. I am no one's baby. I am no one's baby. There's no pillow to land on. No pillow to land on when the bow breaks. Who was the cradle mounted on rockers? I am without a cradle, a ship over-constructed. Girl, why weep over construction? Where will I get rest? How will I be repaired? Woman, do not sink in the unnecessary cost of repairs. Do breathe. Cool the coals in your throat. Saying it aloud stokes the coals in your chest. My grandma is dead. Thank you. And I'm going to silence my phone because it's a hot mess. Okay. So this piece, thank you, Darius. Thank you, guys. Y'all are the best. My phone doesn't care about my feelings, y'all. Please forgive me forever. All right. This poem is called Agenda and To-Do Lists, Strike Through and Check Marks. There is planning and there is execution. I came to execute. I do not like long, drawn-out processes. I do not like timeliness. I like to start and finish in the same damn day. I plug my GPS coordinates in at the stop sign on the way. I edit later, but I can always draft now. And then there is this post-it note trail of all I want to be, remember me laters, repeats and write agains. I believe I can do anything, everything, anything. The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, Burns said. I keep myself fluid. I don't like to lay bricks. What doesn't bend breaks. Be like the reed, the martial artist says. I tie reeds together and play a song. I find scratch paper and markers and keep the kids entertained. I show up to the party early and help decorate. What's the rush? I know this moment won't last. That's that poem. And I wrote that during a Sunday writing group that I do with Susie and I usually do on Sunday mornings. And trying to think about my to-do list, but also why I move like this. Like, why am I so antsy? And what am I doing with my energy? And is it places, am I putting it in the right places? So that's what the poems do, help me figure that out. This poem is called When the Poem is Done. When the poem is done, never. When you say so, when a stranger calls it kin, when its inspiration lives beneath its eyelids, under its tongue, when the poem is lifted by a self-made breeze, becomes aspiration in a room full of your peers, when it illuminates you mid-line, when the poem is rooted in itself, fruit-bearing, apple blossom filling the wind beckoning hello, and its leaves all live as midday booms. That's that poem. And I love this poem, y'all, because it's a little tiny baby. It's a little tiny little leaf, but I love it. And it gives me hope. And this will be my last piece. Thank you so much for listening to me. And this poem is called The Magic of Discovery. I got to write it for the Children's Museum here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, I'm grateful that they let me read in that space. I get to read in interesting places. Poetry takes me places. So this is called The Magic of Discovery. I'm really dedicated to my nieces. Have you ever seen a child take their first steps? Their legs must feel like flopsy rabbit ears in the wind. The air must feel thin and empty, but their hearts must believe in something. I remember the first night my first niece took her first steps. In my sister's carpeted living room floor, her legs wobbled, her knees knocked, her body experiencing its own tiny earthquake. Our excitement was the aftershock. She lifted her foot and became a giant. When I take a moment and think about magic, she is the first time I witnessed it and believed in it. I believe in the magic of children to transfigure us into parents, to edify us with patience, to charm us with giggles, to inspire us with curiosity. Isn't magic just an invitation to play, to be both pirate and princess on the same day? Have you ever heard a child speak for the first time? Ever seen them use the word hello to conjure friendship? Look, here I have an ordinary hand on a sheet of paper. Watch as it turns into a stencil for a turkey, fine art for the refrigerator. See marshmallows and toothpicks become castle towers and drawbridges. Pick a child, any child. Give them abundance. Trust their courage to fail forward. Don't blink. Keep your eyes right here. Step into the world and see them be exactly who they are and help them believe in their own magic. Thank you. Those are my pieces.
Well, thank you for your beautiful poems. I was already a little, I should not have put on makeup for this, and I know better. And here we are. So thank you so very much for reading those beautiful poems. And I hope that these are all going to be in a new collection soon. But we'll talk about that later. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce our second guest today, who is Darius Simpson. And I'm really excited for you to hear from him. Darius Simpson is a writer, educator, performer, and skilled living room dancer from Akron, Ohio. Much like the means of production, he believes poetry belongs to and with the masses. He aims to inspire those chills that make you frown and slightly twist up your face in approval. Darius believes in the dissolution of empire and the total liberation of Africans and all oppressed people by any means available. Free the people, free the land, free all political prisoners. Without further ado, welcome Darius Simpson. How are you feeling tonight, Darius?
I was actually a little low energy, but listening to Vogue, sharing space with y'all, listening to you do your thing as a host, and tying the whole thing together, I'm hyped now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you so much. I can't wait to hear what you're going to read to us tonight. And also, if you feel like getting into some living room dances, I'm down for that as well.
Hey.
I'm here.
So I'm gonna do a new poem first. This is like brand new, like 2 days ago at 4 a.m. So shout out to everybody on here. It's on the internet right now, so people have seen it, but y'all are getting the first and possibly only reading of this version of the poem. So the title is There Are Good Cops and pro-life executioners and scissors without sharp edges and politicians that don't lie and venomous snakes without venom and affordable health care and affordable housing and livable wages and history books that teach history and classrooms that where learning happens and banks that just hold and lend money and freedom and democracy and no political prisoners and a government by and for the people and a people who actually elected the president and a president that actually wants peace and a peace that isn't proxy for genocide. And while we're making shit up, last week, my uncle waltzed backwards out of a graveyard with a dozen sunflowers blooming from what was surely not bullet wounds, whistling a song we played at his not funeral. Slid right on up through them iron gates, his lungs held tight in one not decaying hand, his heart held in place with the other. He thriller walked back to the block where he was not raised. In this not food desert, he twirled into the liquor store, pocketed the entire stock of tobacco products, which could not kill him because they were not lethal. And the owner did not call 911 because monsters do not exist. So I try to start things off with two objective facts. Today's objective facts are Brussels sprouts are disgusting. and it's okay to shoot back at cops. The Black artist's role in America is to aid in the destruction of America as he knows it. Amiri Baraka. I'm from Ohio, but I live just east of a contradiction. Clumps of knotted human hair skip excitedly over sidewalk cracks and pairs. Screeching tires scrape murals into over-patrolled crosswalk paint. City trimmers and zip codes shaken loose from indigenous childhoods. Colonialism don't respect finders keepers. All's fair in genocide except self-defense. There are humans too familiar with the politics of thunderstorm forecasts. Squalor sitting right next door to neighborhood-sized apartment buildings. Half-empty baby bottles rolling over broken glass under the freeway. Brand new cop cars taking victory laps around decade-old encampments. Dead grass is grappling with the distance between beating hearts. Piles of repurposed couch cushions and bench warrants covered in sewage. Climate crisis is disgusted by how many civilians we pile on the curb. While profits skyrocket for empty housing units, while a high rise crawls out the chapped lips of an investor. Okay, I'm not really sure how leasing works. I got my degree in human decency. I'm not really up on the latest ethics for ownership. All my comrades keep space on the couch and a spare blanket. We push the weight limits of a Honda Civic and there is always room. Wednesday or Friday is a good excuse to shoplift under capitalism. Yesterday was sufficient evidence to stack bricks near glass houses. Yesterday was sufficient evidence to stack bricks outside the courthouse. Yesterday was sufficient evidence to stack bricks outside the mayor's house. 1970s criminal records are waiting for academics to put on work boots. I'm not sure what's legal and what's tradition anymore. But at some point, y'all, sick of this shit should lead us to get rid of city council, lest we be made of plastic promises too. Lest the young have a bone to pick, lest that bone come from our inactive trigger fingers, lest there be no lands left to pick a fight on. I blame the suffering last for how we survived the winter. I blame the governor for flooded highways and raining ash. I blame poverty on vegan diet commercials and yoga studios. I blame police for lead pipes and poison middle school history lessons. I blame police for all the mornings my father bit his tongue on the job. I blame police for my lazy eye twitch and my obsessive desire to produce. You know, I even blamed the sheriff's office last week when I stubbed my toe. It left an iron star-shaped blood stain in my sock. Upon hearing about the murder of Hakeem Littleton, a very well-meaning Black person says, you know he shot at the police, right? You know he might not have had his hands up. You know he did not mentor at-risk teenagers after school. You know he was not up to date on his YMCA membership. You know his license was suspended and his tail lights shattered. You know he wasn't wearing a lick of white when they found him, had his pants sagging, had his shirt untucked, had his lips unbuckled, dripping southern twang all on the concrete. It sounded like a mouthful of honeybees was stuck at the top of his throat. You know he was Black. Like black, like dark roast coffee beans, black, like scarecrow, perched just outside the liquor store doorway, black, like purple tar gums and gold teeth, like paper bag hands and menthol breath, like empty Black and Mild wrappers stuffed in the glove compartment. I heard it wasn't even blood where they left him. I heard it was just stains of red Kool-Aid. I heard it was just puddles of strawberry pop fizz. You know, sugar would have got him if 12 didn't. You know his teeth were little yellowing daggers. You know he was a dragon, returned fire, went out in a puff of smoke. You know he was a weapon, didn't beg for his life or call for his mother or his partner. You know that nigga went out on his feet, brought a gun to a gunfight, brought mutiny to a slave ship at the Atlantic shoreline. You know that nigga was a nigga. And not like, ha ha, nigga. Not like next Democratic presidential nominee, nigga. Not like run fast, jump high, nigga. Like worm food covered in tree bark. Like lead water clogging an artery. Like dead leaves stuck in a gutter. Like storm the arsenal and shoot the masters. One of those give me liberty or give me blood types. That nigga had the nerve to want freedom and then go do something about it. And still, what y'all gonna march for him? What would Malcolm X's old zoot suit think? What would a white woman's rendition of Dr. King think? What would the noose say? What if they see us mourning and think we just as dangerous as him? What if I say liberation and they think I mean I hate America? What if I hate America but don't know no other homeland? Shit, what if America hates me back and does something about it, but doesn't leave me time to shoot first? And so in the event that America is indeed America and does what America does, if I'm caught between a badge and a hard place 3 hours after the streetlights turn on, will you church it? Will you pass it along pews of almost saints until it reaches the whole congregation? Will you tithe it? Will you stretch it thin like goat skin over the shell of a djembe drum? Will you slap it? Will you let the echo dance naked in the wet cave of your throat? Will you bark it? Will you sing it like my mother is listening? Will you inhale until your lungs nearly burst, then inhale some more, then inhale some more, then and only then will you say my name? Will you put some stank on it? Will you juke joint James Brown it? Will you Jerry Curl spray it? Now, how can I rest in peace or power if you get all lazy lipped when you talking about me? Will you scoop it thick? Will you stir it slow? Will you mac and cheese it? Will you to spread the savory over your tongue? Will you let it marinate? Will you serve it with Sunday dinner? Now, if you say my name and cast iron skillets don't start to rattling, that mean you ain't say it loud enough. Will you say it again? If an oak tree don't split open from the trunk, that mean you ain't pronounce it right. Will you say it again? Will you redecorate this city in streams of fire after me? Will you paint downtown a scorching hue? Will you stain the sky in black smoke? Will you tell ghost stories over the ashes of this empire? Will you scream it? Will you stand outside in the clutter of some rush hour traffic to let these motherfuckers know what kind of boots I wore? Will you stomp it into the soil of the last place where I laughed with my whole body? Will you dance it? Will you Saturday night praise it? Will you tambourine it? Will you drunken favorite song shout it? Will you full moon howl? Will you shriek? Will you moan? Will you chant? Will you live? Will you fight? Will you cry? Will you cry for me? Will you? Thank y'all.
The answer is yes. I'm already over here like, look, I should have never put on no eye makeup for y'all. So thank you so much for sharing these poems with us. And also, please know, everybody watching at home, that the link to pre-order Never Catch Me is in the chat. So please make sure that you get a copy of that. We're going to have Darius back in a second to talk a little bit more along with Vogue M. Robinson. But I want to introduce you to our third poet as well, because we're just going fire, fire, fire today. And I'm going to hang out and cry. And if you've been to a Margins Meets event before, you already know that's very what I do. Because these poets bust my heart open, and I'm so grateful. Our final author today is Ebony Stewart. Ebony Stewart is an international touring interdisciplinary poet, writer, and performance artist. Her work speaks to the Black experience with emphasis on gender, sexuality, womanhood, queer positivity, and race, with the hopes to be relatable, remove shame, heal minds, encourage dialogue, and inspire folks in marginalized communities. As one of the most decorated poets in Texas, Ebony is a respected coach and mentor, one of the top touring poets in the country, and a Woman of the World Poetry Slam champion. The mental health advocate and former sexual health educator also has a master's in social work and is soon to be the hood's favorite therapist. As a playwright, Ebony's one-woman shows Hunger and Ocean have received B. Iden Payne Awards and the David Mark Cohen New Play Award. She is the author of Blood Fresh, Homegirlhood, and Love Letters to Bald Fists. Her work has been featured in Button Afro Punk, For Harriet, Teen Vogue, the Texas Observer, Houston Public Media, the Breakbeat Poets Volume 2, Black Girl Magic, 2021 Colorism Healing Writing Contest, Write About Now Poetry, and more. Let us not forget the only poet to perform at the 2018 Seattle Pride Festival before 200,000 people was Ebony Stewart. She is hashtag the story of Black girl winning. Without further ado, welcome Ebony Stewart. How you feeling tonight, Ebony?
I'm good, baby. How are you?
I'm so happy to see you, and I can't wait to hear your poems. This brings me joy. I'm going to tell them, like, there was one time when Ebony and I were both reading in the same festival, and we didn't know nobody there in the early days in a small town in Pennsylvania, and we were roommates, and it was beautiful. And so I'm so excited to hear your poems. So many things have happened since. I'm gonna hush now.
My heart, my heart is Susie Q. I am overjoyed to share space and share poems with you all. Like, poets are so special, and I appreciate you, Susie, for doing this for us. Um, I usually get a little like weird about bios, but lately I've been on some like pop my shit, and just to let these hoes know, and also just because like you can be humble and still understand that you did that work, right? So um for Susie Q and all of us who have gaps. So I go to the dentist for a teeth cleaning, and the dentist keep asking me about braces. I ain't missing no teeth, but this gap be wild. I got one mouth and a gap that greet you when I smile and say, fuck you. My daddy gave me this gap, so you gotta know I mean it. You gotta know this gap, how my mama know I'm his, so I gotta keep it still empress to this fallen empire. I suck my teeth with disdain. A dental habit I ain't willing to change. My gap speak Afro-Caribbean, pursed lips, and a country ass. Bitch, please. My mouth clean is these gaps that cuss. How everything I'm thinking get free. This here be my mound of Venus. I part my lips and I'm infinity and beyond. Separate from anything but still a physical feeling. I pray to the God of gaps so the gap be wide enough to make you and all 100 billion galaxies jealous. My teeth be overzealous. Get the glory to any joke you make, cause my gap expanding and got the last laugh anyway. You can't close the light out of this here mouth ever. Sometimes I sound like gravel. Sometimes I sound like coffee and cream, but every time my gaps speak, it say what it mean. I brought the cool air and wealth of my family with me. We and the teeth say, fuck your standard of beauty. We be a good thing that lasted. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Some of my words got a list when they talk, but that don't mean I'm starving the proper way of speaking. My gap just whistle while it work. Say, give me my space. Trust me with love, even if you haven't acquired taste. Like sometimes like poems do this thing where you get to like celebrate your own self in your poetry, and recognize and understand and allow and do all that kind of work, right? And then there's other times where I feel like the work is the work, right? All of us being poets, which is I want to just say, like, in some parts I think it's a ridiculous um job. It's a ridiculous career to be a poet, right? Because like no one cares about us but us is very clear. And we get super excited, okay, about just being us, but then in that confidence and in all of those moments of being clear and complicated, and then also just like not getting paid our worth if you will, sometimes. Um, there is also a particular type of fear. Yeah. And so I just want you all to think about what are some things that you are fearful of or afraid of, so we can be in this thing together. Yeah. I'm asked to write about the birth of my demons, how fear is born, the way it came into existence. I struggle myself to ink, strike through words, crumble 100 pages with fear written all over them, leaving me waist deep in torture. Flood my body with every story that has ever tried to consume me. Fear must have been born like this. And tremble and strain sounds must be a belly's echo with muffled screams slung all around. Must be an artist, must be an international student relearning everything that couldn't make its way across an ocean. Must be an island, must be lonely, growing lusciously. Must have grown fangs and thorns and vines. Must have wrapped itself in everything hard and hurt. Must have strangled love until its eyes popped out. Fear must be blind and touching everything. Must have 8 arms and 3 heads. Must be a monster mating with itself multiple times until it became a forest, a continent, a whole person, a place to live. Fear must have a stubborn heart. Must thump stress, speak creep. Must haunt your dreams, your goals, your happiness. Fear be a bottom feeder. Must scrape every last bit of hope from your feet. Must keep you stuck and graduated hater. Yeah, fear. Must be a cowboy roping, hanging. Must be a gangster with a machine gun. Must be a police officer with an empty weapon after emptying his weapon inside the soul of a black body. It must be a black mother's home while these unarmed black bodies walking around. Fear must be a nigga. Everybody want to be a nigga, but don't nobody want to be a nigga. Shots fired. Yeah, shots fired. Yeah, fear must be balmy, core beauty, and exotic. The whole person of color, a whole person of color in a room must be the revolution untelevised. Must be a man calling out another man when misogyny forces its way into his mouth. Fear must be coming out, but still having to pretend to be someone else. Must be a body in transition. Must be permission for 2 women to kiss in public, for 2 men to hold hands. Fear must be a law, must be in place to save the human race. Quote, the universe wrote fiction in us, and it's called fear. And I'm not saying I'm ashamed. I don't even want to be brave. I just don't want to be afraid of being who I am, but fear is the part of me I know the most. Therefore, I think I'm free, but am I really? Fear is who we love and sexing and paying our tithes to. Yes, fear is a God, a religion, who we pray to and believe in. Fear mustn't be uttered, admitted, or claimed to have faith in. Fear must just be who fear be and how fear came about. Y'all know, like, there's oftentimes like we don't talk enough about certain emotions that we feel. I am so curious about this. I'm also curious about us, like we talk about it, but it's like in metaphor because we're kind of hiding or we're scared or we can't always say the things that we are thinking and feeling. And here's the thing, like about being like the hood's favorite, like the hood's favorite therapist. That's the goal. Because I'm finishing up this degree. I just got like my practicum hours left. Would not recommend, but if you want to go back to school, like that's between you and your God. I'm not gonna tell you what you should or should not do. But I will say this. One of the best mirrors that I have had held up to me in this time frame has been this clinical social work degree, right? Where I have an opportunity to really look at disorders and then really think about how it applies to my life, or how it applies to poets, how it applies to, what I understand this country to be. And so it's so interesting because I'm going to read this poem to you. It's so interesting to think about poets and what we do, whether it be slam or spoken word or, whatever the version is that we frequent, to think of us as people who have disorders. I don't know if you're aware. Tantrums, or how to be a poet in 6 steps. Histrionic personality disorder is a mental health condition that affects the way a person thinks, perceives, and relates to others. A person with histrionic personality disorder seeks attention, talks dramatically with strong opinions, is easily influenced, has rapidly changing emotions, and thinks relationships are closer than they are. Treatment typically includes talk therapy. 1. If poetry was all the healing we needed, then God would have come back by now. Good intentions do not erase harm, so do no harm. Create boundaries. Those of us who give a lot often get little in return, but you still got to wait your turn. Still got to lift folks up, reach back, and put people on. Trust your gut. Not everyone has the same heart as you. If you have to leave to be appreciated, then stay gone. 2. There will be people who are banking on you not knowing your worth. They will come dressed in community but speak lackingly, bearing disappointment, claiming to be non-confrontational, then do some fuck shit. It's easier to write poems that are pretty than it is to have accountability. I'll tell you a story, it won't take long. Once upon a time, I adored a woman who, when she spoke, it sounded like magic. She had a habit of making folks feel close. Whole time she was just trying to stunt my growth or keep me from surpassing my master. There's something predatory and negligent in persuading fresh blood to write a poem and perform their trauma without making provisions or providing resources. But you can't fix what they don't know or what folks won't admit is broken. I'll teach you a trick. If they say they love you, but you can't feel it because they don't show it, or it feels manipulative, then that love ain't it. James Baldwin said, people can cry much easier than they can change. And I believe him because I've seen it. Just as I've seen folks fake the Holy Ghost and call poetry church, but I've never wanted to be a part of a congregation that helps me hide or parade my demons instead of healing them. But here we are. Poetry is not therapy, but a lot of us need it. 3. Okay. You wrote the poem, poet, but was it honest? Or is the poem only who you pretended to be? All poets are magicians hiding feelings in metaphors and hyperbole. God be in these poems, but I'm not perfect. My favorite illusion is living in a body that wants to survive with a mind that's trying to kill me. My greatest fear is dying unsatisfied. So I'm trying to write myself into some place tender before I die. Poets stay trying to write letters to the universe to ask if we're enough. We want to talk about our stuff and receive praises, but a lot of us still want to remain the same. You want folks to get this work, but you don't really want to do the work, poet. Poetry understands that grief is not linear, but wounds that go undealt with do not make you a prophet. Sometimes you have to write the same poem twice. Once when you didn't know any better, and the second time when you stopped holding the hurt somebody else gave you. When both hands are free, it's amazing what you can learn to hold with them. I too had to remove myself from people who only valued what I could do for them by how much I was willing to endure. If you love yourself, the least you can do is be available for bullshit. 4. Let your character carry more weight than titles do. Your poems are good, but do they resemble you? Along the way, you will meet so many versions of yourself, but which of you will you commit to? I'll tell you one thing about one thing. I've never gotten into it with someone I believe to be my friend over the color green. Some greedies confuse loyalty with money, move funny and reveal who they truly are for the possibility of a possibility, break bread and then lie to you. They asking for the blueprint to my win. Someone has really got to teach us how to treat people. I'm calling poets up, out, and in. You are who you are. What's mine is mine, and I've been hurt before, so I'm careful not to let too many in. It's a trapping that comes with celebritism and fame, but I promise I want peace more than I want attention. Finally, financially stable, but I stay working on my mental. The heart is tough, but can still bruise easily. And I didn't die at 8 or 17 or 25 or 40. No bio can hold me. I do too much, just ask my pen. The cost of struggle is not transferable, necessary, or nobly noticed. I write the way I write as if the world I want is on its way back to me. 5. Your boundaries, your fee, your existence and expectations are not suggestions. People and circumstances cannot stop blessings and abundance. 6. Your heart does not have to hurt for everything. Tell us, Is your poetry sunshine? Is it air? Does it exercise, dance, and breathe? Drink water? Pay attention to what is ingested and invested? Does the poet know when to rest, make love, and be woke? If you want poetry, then you want God, which means you want laughter, freedom, and forgiveness. What would happen if you wrote a poem and lived a life that ended with you knowing you did what you came here to do? I should always remember to write about joy, and I always forget that I am my favorite. Each time I write, I am dedicated to teaching myself how to love. When I say I know my worth, what I mean is, have you ever seen an unfuckwittable being? Therapy is a treatment plan that can teach the poet and the poem to stay present. But if you only write the poems to hear yourself talk, then you really won't learn its lesson. Thank you.
I had to take a little second. Hosting y'all is difficult. 'Cause I'm in my
We
feelings.
can't hear you. Oh no.
I'm bringing everybody back in now. Can you hear me all right?
I can't hear you. Maybe it's just me.
Okay.
Oh, no. I can hear you, Susan. I can hear you, Ebony.
I'm gonna see if I can put some captions on or something. Can you hear me now? Ebony, can you hear anybody? Can you hear Vogue? I'm gonna try
I'm
this.
talking, saying the words, words on words on words. Ebony, can you hear me? You can't hear nobody. The
Okay.
pain.
Okay, I'm gonna see if Ebony wants to pop out and pop back in, because the good news is we heard Ebony, and
Yeah.
that was beautiful. And now we can try to gather our faces a little bit. I'm like, well, that was a lot just happened, and I'm so grateful. And we've been here together for just over 40 minutes, and my whole heart is transformed in that little space of time. All of you did something entirely different with your poems, and it was so powerful in every case. And I'm so grateful that I got to hear all of you today. I want to know a little bit more about um, when you think about, like, all of your poetry is very, very different. You have very different voices. And I wonder, like, who would you consider are like some of your writing's ancestors? Who are some of the people that you learn from, people that you go to over and over again, people that you feel like you've inherited some technique from, some skills from? Who are some people who inspire you? And Vogue and Darius, you are both muted currently. I'm gonna try to unmute you real quick.
My Lord. That's a dope ass question. Darius, I want to know your answer.
Oh, I did the point thing. You didn't see me. That was me
Nah.
trying to get you to go first, but you did it out loud, so now I gotta. Wow. Yeah. So this question always comes up at writing events, and I'm like a difficult responder to questions, but so I'm like, are they really ancestors? Can I call them ancestors? Do they agree? Like, am I really doing the things? But I think folks that I like, whose legacy I'm trying to do justice and would be honored to like be in the same, conversation about when folks are thinking about poems is Miri Baraka, Asada Shakur, and like writing ancestors not meaning like past, but in the tradition and trajectory of Gil Scott Heron, and June Jordan. Those are just a handful of folks that come to mind when I think about like who I'm trying to like live up to on and off the page.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Darius, and I think that you are on the trajectory. I can hear it. Even in the you have a boisterousness. There's a buoyancy and a movement and a rhythm to your work that's really powerful. Yeah, so I think you doing it. I think I know for myself, you're welcome. Yeah. Hey, Ebony, we're glad you're back. We're answering the question about who are our poetry like ancestors, s'il vous plaît. So for myself, I would say I always looked at Maya Angelou's work and then Eve Ensler. And Nikki Giovanni gave me permission to write in a way that was conversational and kind. She got a poem about friends, and I'm like, we're friends. What are poems about your friends? How many of us where are those poems? And I love that even in her newest, like one couple years before the book, that work is there. So I think that that's the direction I want to go. More gentle and more simple. I love the punches, but I need gentleness now, and so even the work now is so different from the work that's in my book. It's so gentle in that direction. Those are my three.
Yes, I love these answers. And also, like, you know, I feel like Nikki could slice somebody's neck real gentle too. You know what I mean? Quick, like.
I really no white person have it, you know, like it's in there.
Yeah, it's all. I think sometimes like the kindest people have been have got the potential for a lot of things. You know what I mean? Ebony, who would you say are like some of the people who you aspire to or who inspire you deeply? Like, who are some of the poetry parents you consider?
Yeah, poetry parents. I love that. I love that phrase, even just thinking about that phrase. Like Narazaki Shenge, I don't think that she has ever written anything wrong, or that literally I cannot read her work without having a pen and pad or something near me. Because it just makes me so generative and alive, which I didn't get a chance to say because I know I had like dipped out, but like the listening to, Vogue and Darius, really, I enjoy folks that make me want to write, that remind me that I'm a writer. That is just one, like, a little bit of goodness out there. But let's see who else. Maya Angelou is easy for me. She's actually the very first poet that I ever was introduced to as a kid. And then Gil Scott-Heron, like, I feel like his work is electric and alive and in your face and colorful. You know what I mean? So I think that's my little like souffle. But if we talking about like Mount Rushmore of poets, like my fourth one like changes all the time, just because I think about so many different poets that I love, which I don't know if anybody said this, again, because I'm just dipping back in, but the new work that you just put out, Susie, is it's a problem, friend. It's a problem for them. It's a problem for these hoes. It's just really it's delectable. Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you. I love that. Thank you so much. And also, you and Darius both said Gil Scott-Heron. And once upon a time, I opened for him, kind of on accident. I was part of an organization that was hosting him for an event, and he had his own relationship with time, as poets often do. Yeah. And so the people were getting frustrated in the audience. They had paid their money. They were in their seats. So eventually a handful of us looked around at each other. We said, we're going to have to kick this show off. We're going to have to give the people something. And so we took to the stage and we kept the people engaged until he arrived, and it worked out beautifully. But yes, that's how that happened. Was very renegade, which I think is the only way it's supposed to go. It's just like, he ain't here yet. Hand me that microphone right quick. Do what we're gonna do. So that's how that went. But it was a beautiful, beautiful night, and definitely he's someone who inspires me, as all of you. I think that there's something so powerful about being in community in whatever way, right? And so in the before times is what I'm calling them, right? We might see each other at shows, hear each other like festivals and different gatherings and etc. But we didn't really get to spend that much time hanging out and just talking about our approach and our process and our inspiration and kind of all of those things, right? And if we did, it was private, and after event, and other people didn't get any insight into that conversation. So I love getting to have these moments where we really just get to talk about how we impact each other. There's so many stories, again, about the lonely life of a writer and this solitary life of a writer. And all of you have talked a little bit about the impact of community. Who would you say is your community when you think about like who you want to share with, who you want to connect to, who informs you, who inspires you, who you're trying to be with? A friend of mine recently gave a keynote on the difference between a community and a collective, and was defining it as though community is like kind of default. This is just the people that are around and happenstance, and a collective is the people that we choose to be with and create with. So who would you define as your community or collective? Who are your people?
This is a good ass question. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a good ass question. I just need some time to let it marinate, honestly. But just because I'm also having to change my relationship to the differences of community and collective, right? And um like in the last poem that I was able to share, I really had a hard time um admitting to myself that I don't mean as much to people as they mean to me sometimes. And I put a lot of trust and effort into this poetry world, right? And I'm in a place in my life where I just have to be around people that I trust and I love, right? And that I know trust me and love me as a part of reciprocity being a love language, right? But like my people, like off the top of my head, it goes like Lois Gallo, Pages Matam, Ariana Brown, Ayo Kunle Falamo. It goes like people that I know without a shadow of a doubt, right? Ebo, Barton, I can like call on and they won't ask me nothing. They'll just like, if I need bail money, they just like, we sending it. We don't need to, you know what I mean? We don't know what you did. If I need to hide a body, Janae Johnson, Portia O, right? Like, yeah, like, but there's also people that I've learned that are part of like this poetry world and community that also aren't necessarily poets, but they show up and they do the work to just take care and create like very positive and loving spaces. And that list could go on forever, but I really want to think about this. This is a good ass question.
That was a beautiful answer. Thank you for saying all those names into the space. I'm like, oh, I love so many of them too. Like, oh, it's brought back so many delicious memories. So thank you. Vogue, Darius, you want to share a little bit about who your people are?
Yeah, I'll hop in, Darius. I'll give you some time since I got you last time. Ebony, yeah, just to echo that compliment, like I literally am sitting here, I was taking notes while you guys were writing because I was just like, ooh, ask those rhetorical questions, Darius. Yes, prepositional phrase in the event of. I was like, what do I have in the event of in my work? I'm gonna throw it in, like the repetition, the turn, and like the poet, you want to be recognized for the work, you don't want to do the work. We're so direct and so relatable, and thank you both so much for your work. When I think about my community in Las Vegas, it's interesting. My experience this weekend, I worked a festival, and lately I've been putting on the shirt and calling myself art mercenary because I'm like, oh, is it an event? Will you cut the check? Cool, I'm sliding in. And that's what it's been lately. I have some stipulations and then I know my worth. But I've been like, if it is a literary event in town, I will be there. And people at this point, the poets, the younger poets, the people who are just now stepping into the poetry, I'm not performing as much as I used to, and my writing is very quiet and private, but I show up for folks in a different kind of way and have been coordinating and giving people opportunities where I can speak in their name into locations. And so my experience was I was running around doing stuff for Faylita Hicks and Roxane Gay and Eve Ewing were all in town. And my community, so like Connie Ann Santos in my community was like, Vogue, have you drank water? And I was like, I'm finna. And she showed up 5 minutes later and just handed me a cup of water and was like, I haven't seen you drink water, drink this. And I was like, oh, I am cared for and loved. My badge was swinging in the wind because the wind is crazy in Las Vegas, or it does a lot in Las Vegas. And Monarch the poet came and untwisted my badge and said, let me fix this for you. And they've dubbed me kind of poetry fairy godmother, but they love me back in the same way. And I didn't know I meant what I mean to a lot of folks. And it's really nice to see that love in action. And so like a lot of poets are like Miss AV, Ashley Vargas, like she knows if she calls me, I got her. I'll answer questions and help to whatever ability I can. Like, but then Jesse Parent in Utah, like if I have a question for Jesse or we want to have a conversation, he'll show up for me as well. If my spouse is actually a poet as well, AJ Moyer, he ain't in the streets like he used to. So I think proximity, people that I live nearby the poetry community in this town, I've done a lot, but I feel like I am appreciated and loved. And then my play sister, Deep Deborah Mouton out in Texas. and of course Susie Q. Smith. Y'all have just been pivotal in helping me like repair myself. Like it's been a couple of years of healing. So a lot of what you were saying, Ebony, resonated so deeply in doing the personal work. And you wrote the poem, but is it honest? Is that that's the real editing question. That's the editing question. Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure. I'm gonna throw my little 2 cents in here. I'm sitting here just thinking about the question because so much of what y'all said is resonating and make me think about a bunch of different things. But spent a lot of time over the pandemic thinking about who your people are and like what that means. I know for me, I just started like really studying theory and putting it into practice. I've always been the protest bullhorn type cat, but really understanding historical trajectory to how we get here, political analysis, theoretical, all that type of shit. Over the pandemic, and I had a lot of conversations with folks. I think one of the people is on the call right now, which is super funny, but we were talking about just like politics. And so I didn't vote in the 2020 election, and there was a lot of conversations around that. And what grounded some of the disagreements I was having with folks was this question of who my people are. And so there was this extension in my recent trajectory of radicalization where defining who my folks are, i.e. whose condition am I like consistently concerned about. And so just to give the example in terms of a national election, how is the condition transformed for poor folks, for the poorest of folks, for incarcerated people, for political prisoners, for houseless folks? What is an election to them, and just extending community in that way. So when I think about people, I think about like that, and those being like material folks that I'm interested in and engaged in like building solidarity with in terms of community. But then I also think about poets, we be real loud. We be saying all the things. We get on the stage and say, this too is my revolution, all that type of stuff. And it has me thinking about this other question of like, does your community know that your community, like you step outside and they know. You say you out here writing for radicals, right? Out here writing for poor people, out here writing for whoever. Do they recognize you? Do they see you away from the stage? And I think that's a super important question in terms of us as artists. Like, who are the people that you are purporting to speak for or speaking to? And again, for me with this book, a lot of the poems change. My writing of the poems change because I'm talking to people that are not necessarily poets, niggas working 3 jobs that might pick up a book, my family, my folks from Akron, Ohio, and I really hope that poets like the book, and I want it to be useful to people that are not necessarily poets. And not on some, I want everyone to read it, but like really genuinely to people, if it's not useful to them, then it falls flat. And then one more response to the question. I was sitting here thinking and still have so many more thoughts, so I'm gonna wrap it here because I've been talking for a minute. My niggas, man, the folks that similarly to what Ebony was saying, I know I can call on them. Susie being one of them, pulling up for the blurb and all things. Tongo Isaac Martin, Landon Smith, Imani Cezanne, Janae Johnson. So the list goes on, and my folks know who they are because I'm in their ear consistently. I think the last thing I might say on like who your people are is poets is funny, man. It's so funny. We do not say to each other how much we mean to each other until we're introducing each other, and that shit is wild to me. And so I encourage all of us to get into the practice. Maybe you're already good at that. I know I suck at it, but yeah.
I think that is a beautiful thought to close on. It's like, okay, let's tell all of our people that they are our people and that we love them and tell them all the things. I'm so grateful for all of you and your poems. And I'm glad that we get to be alive at the same time and sharing work and continuing to discuss it collectively. When I consider my collective and my people, you are all there. And I'm so grateful. And I appreciate you and everyone watching at home, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching later. I hope this inspires you. Oh, hey, there goes Lando. What up?
Can I say hi to Vanessa? Hi, Vanessa. I love you. I appreciate you.
Oh, ending on this beautiful, beautiful note of love and joy. And seeing you all on my screen brings me joy. I hope that we are in the same space where we are breathing the same air again in the future. Margins is one of the places where that can happen. And I'll keep you in touch with everything else that we're building. because we're trying to build something for all of us, and something sustainable and beautiful where we can continue to learn from each other, inspire each other, and be together. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your poems. Everybody watching, cop these books. The links are in the chat. So be sure that you support these artists. Follow them on social media. Buy the books. Tell your friends to buy the books. Start book clubs with your friends, your coworkers. You know what I mean? Like, just get some copies. Give them as gifts. They make wonderful birthday presents, revolution presents, right? Juneteenth presents. Oh, get in there, right? We're now celebrating Juneteenth as a country. What better way than supporting Black poets? So that being said, get you some Juneteenth poetry. Start a Juneteenth poetry club. And I hope you have a beautiful evening. Thank you again, and good night.